For months, shipments of crow were going missing on the highways of northeastern Los Angeles. They last been seen on the freeway, climbing up towards the Goo Ridge Mountains, around Greg's Peak, and towards the Valley of Bad Uncles when they'd vanish. Poof! Out of thin air! When the first truck disappeared, we didn't think that much of it. We all just figured he carelessly slipped off down the mountain, and, that happens. We didn't hold a funeral for him since the story explicitly forbids funerals. But then the second truck disappeared, then another. Then we're down to 10 shipments of crow. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a coordinated attack against the Church of the Story. Sister Calissa pulled me aside after services one week. Pastor Andrew and Brother Reed needed to see me in their office. The private investigations unit of the Church of Story looked into the heist and narrowed down the suspects to a pack of unlikely, conventionally attractive, rough and ready 20-somethings with access to super fast, tricked out cars. They were quick and they were furious. There was Gonzalez, the crew mechanic. If you needed an oil change, he'd take you to Jiffy Lube and stay with you in the drop-ceiling waiting room while the dependable team at Jiffy Lube changed your oil at a discount price. Great guy. There was Bernadette, the no-bullshit, hard-talking, hard-walking, hard-fighting, ex-professional surfer turned weapons expert. She could throw a knife 7 feet, and she didn't take shit from anyone. What a bitch. There was Dax Shepard. He was, kind of fun to be around, I guess. His jokes didn't always land, but his agent fought pretty hard and convinced the producers to put him in the story. I don't even think that he could drive. And finally, there was Vint Dieselt, the identical twin brother of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He was the crew's leader, the father, the T.O., the brother. He was serious, but had a big heart, and he could drive a quarter of a mile furiously. Furiously quick? The private investigations unit had names, but couldn't figure out why the crew was doing it. What would drive someone to steal crow, the official beverage of the story? What type of sicko would deprive the story's loyal servants of its stinging, tangy taste, refreshing carbonation, and energy boost the story so desperately craves? After Pastor Andrew and Brother Reed debriefed me, there was a suspenseful silence. Sister Calissa stood by the door, wringing her hands with worry. Brother Reed scratched his arm, satisfying an itch from a concerning rash. Pastor Andrew clasped his hands and took a deep breath, looking down at his desk. "What are you asking?" I finally croaked. Brother Reed looked up.
"We're asking you to go undercover. One last time. For the story."
"God damn it," I muttered. My palms were sweating.
"Will you do it? Will you serve the story?"
Pastor Andrew asked. I thought about my wife, Ed Jr., and how happy I was that she decided to take my name. My children, Greg, Gorg, and Grin. But most of all, I thought about the story and my commitment to its word. "I'll do it," I replied. "I'll do this one last job." All right, drop that beat. The intelligence report uncovered in the group of illegal street racers who met on Tuesday nights on the industrial streets of the Los Angeles neighborhood of Brooklyn. It was just like the movies. There were girls in bikinis dancing on cars, tough men, and rough women leaning up against their tricked-out whips, and ear-splitting drag races going down every 15 minutes. Also, Chris Ludacris Bridges was there. I watched race after race. I saw a 1998 white Toyota Camry flip when it hit a breakneck speed of 70 miles an hour, ejecting the driver through the window and smashing him brutally against the NOS energy drink-soaked pavement. An Ecuadorian-made motorcycle with an undiagnosed oil leak hit 35 and skidded into a crowd of cool dudes doing sick tricks with jewel plumes. The oil soaked them and ignited. They plumed as they burned alive. Everyone cheered. A 1996 Dodge Caravan drove past Chris Ludacris Bridges so quickly he vomited on his junk. I was hooked. We were gearing up for the last race of the night when a symphony of growling engines approached in the distance. A hush fell over the crowd. Chris Ludacris Bridges stopped spitting his unmistakable brand of in-your-face Atlanta hip-hop. 4 identical 2003 champagne-colored Ford Tauruses rolled up and came to a stop. One by one, the drivers dramatically got out. It was Gonzalez, it was Dax Shepard, Bernadette, and then finally, Vint Dieselt. He looked so much like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, it was incredible. They folded their arms and stared down the crowd. Some of the people looked at the ground with humble respect. A gang of Japanese Yakuza who were mad at them for some reason grimaced and snarled. A pit bull sat down. The silence was deafening when finally Dax Shepard spoke.
Hope we're not late.
He delivered kind of unconvincingly. Everyone laughed super hard, though. It was great. The crew was here. They were furious. And they were here to race. Quickly.
I do declare I am quite in the mood for a race.
Gonzalez said in his unmistakable Chilean accent.
Who has what it takes to race Gonzalez?
He said in the third person. People shuffled their feet until some poor sucker in a Supreme shirt stepped forward.
Cheerio!
Gonzalez cried. The men got into their cars and pulled up to the starting grid. A referee in an official uniform stood in front of the cars and spoke.
Here are the rules.
He said, reading from an ancient scroll. The crowd listened with respect.
You need to drive your car very quickly. And when the boys stop singing, you hit the gas.
He paused dramatically.
Any questions?
The crowd went crazy. An all-boy children's choir that came out of the crowd, they took the place of the referee. They began singing their songs, singing in their angelic voices. Several men in the crowd were reduced to tears at its beauty. The instant the singing stopped, the racers hit the gas. The poor sucker in the Supreme shirt was in the lead, the taillights of a Chevy Cavalier glowing red. Gonzalez was falling behind as the Cavalier pulled further away. But Gonzalez wasn't afraid. He was in total control. With a grin, he reached in the glove compartment and pulled out a boiling hot Crow-Croa. Crow-Croa, I muttered to myself, taking a mental note. Gonzalez guzzled it down greedily, gulping it with glee. The awesome power of the story overtook his body, and he floored his Ford Taurus. He was going so fast, he left a trail of fire behind him. The Chevy Cavalier was no match. Gonzalez was furious, and his car was even furiouser. And quick, he blew past the Cavalier, right to the sound barrier. The explosion shattered the windows of the Cavalier and burst the driver's eardrums. Gonzalez's opponent was so distraught he unbuckled his seatbelt. He turned left, sped right into a wall, his head crashing against the steering wheel, splitting his skull, exposing a fizz of brains. Gonzalez crossed the finish line with time to spare. He got on the hood of his car, started dancing. It was cool.
Smoking!
Yelled Dax Shepard. He did a hip dance move to the amusement of the crowd. Bernadette smirked, but just a little bit, because she was really tough. Holy story, I whispered to myself.
Story?
Scoffed the deep voice behind me. My blood went cold. I turned. It was Vint Dieselt. Up close, he looked even more like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
What do you mean by story?
He questioned, clenching his teeth. I had a choice to make. Did I tell him I was a devotee of the story and risk a brutal, prolonged beatdown? Or did I lie and betray its truth? I made my decision. The story? I paused. The story for Grease and True? One word, the only story, the story must be told. He glared at me, saying nothing. He exhaled hard, betraying a smile for just an instant, before again furrowing his brow.
Let's get one thing straight.
He growled.
I don't trust you. But do you want to join my crew? We're a family. Loyalty is important.
I stared back, not wanting to seem too eager. I acted as if I was considering his offer, but I knew my answer. I'll do it, I said. He nodded and walked away. Lots happened over the next 6 years that can only be explained through a montage. Gonzalez told me about his family back home while we waited in Jiffy Lube waiting rooms. Bernadette warmed up to me and taught me the parts of the knife, like the handle and the blade. Dax Shepard was fine. And over those 6 years, I shared the word of the story with the crew. I read from the book and anointed them in greases. Vint was our rock. Our father, our T.O., our brother. He was calm, collected, but distant. They taught me the importance of loyalty and family, but never once did any one of them mention Crow Crowa. Oh yeah, we also went on a lot of heists. They were action-packed, rubber-burning, paint-trading, high-stakes robberies with guns and explosions and misdirections and celebrity cameos. That was where the real fun was. It was some super exciting, edge-of-your-seat stuff. Ha! If you could have only seen it. Wow. But it got edited out of the story so we could save time. We were the kings of all of Brooklyn, Los Angeles. We had it all. Money, wealth, riches, cash, moolah, simoleons, dough, doubloons. Those were the golden years. We were having the time of our lives. All of us but Vint. He'd grown quiet, withdrawn. No matter how many times we asked, he wouldn't give us a straight answer. When he was out of earshot, the crew speculated.
Hey, what's the matter with Vint?
Dag Shepard would ask in a just okay accent of Italian stereotype.
Blimey, I must say, I am indeed concerned about Vint's composure.
Worried Gonzalez.
He's going soft.
Puffed Bernadette, true to her character of being a no-nonsense, straight shooter. I looked to the story for guidance. It gave me none. Until the last family dinner we had as a crew. Every Sunday night, we ate dinner together as a family, because family's important, and so is loyalty. We each had a plate before us. Spaghetti, piled high with extra gravy, mozzarella, and a charcuterie of gabagool on the side. We joined hands and bowed our heads to give thanks to the story and waited for Vint Diesel to lead us. We waited and waited until he cleared his throat and broke the silence.
A Crow Crowa shipment is leaving from northwest Los Angeles tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., heading towards the Goo Ridge Mountains. When it crosses into the Valley of Bad Uncles, we strike.
Bernadette dropped her fork. It clanged loudly against her plate, falling with a squish into her spaghetti.
You said we were done with Crow Crowa.
She said seriously, eyes forward, her hands clenched in fists.
Crikey!
Screamed Gonzalez insanely.
Oh, what?
Shouted Dax Shepard, that idiot.
I thought we were done too, Bernadette.
Vince said without breaking eye contact with her.
But this heist, it's too good. There's too much to lose. We gotta provide for each other. Loyally. Like a family. Because loyalty and family are important. I say we do this one last job, and then we're done. We move to Toledo, Ohio like we've always wanted to. We start over. But we gotta make this decision together.
A hush fell over the table. For the first time in, 6 years, I remembered why I was there in the first place. When he said Crow Crowa, it reminded me. I was like, duh! Pastor Andrew, Brother Reed, must be worried sick. Oh, Story and my family back home. I hadn't thought of them once. Well, what are you gonna do?
Are you in?
Vint asked dramatically.
Or are you out?
I can't believe you're asking this.
Bernadette muttered. We sat in silence.
I mean,
Whispered Gonzalez.
Count me in.
Dax Shepard said, but he kind of flubbed it. He wasn't good with words.
Jesus Christ.
Bernadette whispered.
Count me in.
They turned to me. I looked at each of them. Vint, Bernadette, Gonzalez, fucking Dax Shepard. I wouldn't miss this party for the world. We were in position. The sun beat down on us. The Goo Ridge Mountains towered in the distance. Dax Shepard took the high ground, ready to give us a signal when a semi packed with Crow Crowa came into the target zone. Bernadette was at the end of the valley, ready to intercept the truck as a failsafe if it got away. Even though I couldn't see her, I knew she was acting tough. Vint and I sat in his tricked-out Ford Taurus. Man, it was cool. We were pulled over on the shoulder, ready to take the truck. I was in the seat next to him with a harpoon gun that shot a grappling hook to zipline me onto the hood of the truck.
I think I see something.
Dax Shepard said over a radio nervously.
Hold.
We sat in silence. Vint gripped the wheel, his leather gloves crinkling under the pressure. He turned to me seriously.
You got anything to tell me before we do this?
He asked. My hands began to sweat, and my heart sped up. My face burned with guilt. Yeah, I said after a moment. I turned to him. Let's fucking do this. He nodded. It was unclear if I told him what he wanted to hear.
It's in view! Go, go!
Dax Shepard said over the radio nervously. The semi-truck roared past us, the Crow insignia beautifully painted on the side of the container. I mouthed the words in slow motion as it went by. I never wanted to plump on it so bad in my life. Vint floored it. I got pushed back in my seat as the Taurus climbed at 25 miles an hour, steadily rising until we hit 50. Cacti zoomed past. I opened the window and the pressure chains popped our eardrums. Here goes nothing, I said to Vint. He held up his knucks for a knuck bump, and I bumped his knucks back. Wind spun around me, pushing me in uneven directions as I climbed onto the Taurus's hood. I put the harpoon gun over my shoulder and I fired. Crack! Whoosh! Click! I got on the first try. I pushed the lever Bernadette had installed and zipped me across the road, right on top of the back of the truck. Piece of cake, I said to myself as I fought the wind and walked towards the cab of the truck. I spoke too soon. Two men climbed out of the window of the truck, armed with machine guns, wearing skeleton masks because they're super intimidating. They opened fire. I did a backflip, landed right on the edge of the back of the truck. I waved my arms up and down to steady myself when one of the henchmen shot me through the bicep. I cried out. I fell back off the truck, catching myself with my good arm right before I hit the pavement of certain death. The henchmen cheered, confident they'd got me. Vint was speeding close behind the truck. I gave him the thumbs up. He gave me one back when his face dropped. Vint swerved as the henchman opened fire from above onto his Ford Taurus. Blood splattered the car interior against the windshield. It swerved off the road and came to a stop. Vint! I screamed. Now, I was furious. I climbed up the back of the cab, adrenaline numbing my injured arm. I pulled myself onto the truck and shouted, "Come get a piece, you fuckers!" The men charged towards me. I disarmed the first, taking his gun and bashing it against his forehead, splitting his skull in a purple bruise. He staggered around me and fell off the truck, skidding against the asphalt. "My brother!" screamed the other henchman jerk-off. He ran towards me, but I grabbed him and I caught him in a bear hug and I bit him on the throat. He screamed, weaving back, holding onto his neck. I kicked him and he rolled off the truck and under its wheels. His guts spilled across the highway. Whoopsie doozles. Carefully, I walked to the front of the truck and jumped on the roof. I peeked over, looking to the open driver's side window. "How about you stop before you join your friends back there?" I asked coldly.
Sure, man, whatever you want.
The driver shouted. He slammed on the brakes, bringing the truck to a stop. I slid down the hood of the truck as he ran out into the desert. He'd be dead in no time. Bernadette pulled over the roar.
Get in.
She screamed and we burned rubber towards Vint's car. She fishtailed to a stop in front of it. Dax Shepard crouched over Vint. Vint was on the ground, holding his abdomen. He'd been shot in the arms, chest, belly, chin, ears, and legs. He was a goner.
Vint!
Screamed Bernadette. He smiled at her, blood leaking from his mouth.
I need to speak to Ed.
He whispered. They respectfully gave us our space. I knelt down by him.
Or should I say, Cardinal Larson.
My face drained. Tears welled my eyes. You knew? He blinked hard, rapidly but oddly, unevenly, signifying a serious brain injury.
Of course I knew.
But why'd you do it? I asked. I leaned down and kissed him on his forehead.
They asked me to.
He gurgled. It was gross. Who?
Pastor Andrew, Brother Reed, and Sister Callista. To test your devotion to the story.
Oh, sons of bitches! I shouted.
Shh. They'll hear you.
he said with a wink. He nodded to his right. Bernadette pulled at her face, tearing off a mask. The unmistakable flowing locks of Brother Reed's gorgeous hair spilled onto his shoulders. He threw the mask to the ground and laughed warmly. Gonzalez pulled at his scalp, ripping off his mask, revealing the freshly toned skin of Pastor Andrew. He grinned. His teeth were sparkling. Vince's total car stirred and its hood popped open. Out rolled a beaming Sister Callista. Dax Shepard was actually Dax Shepard, which is actually pretty disappointing because I was hoping it would be somebody else.
Hey, buddy.
Brother Reed smiled.
Thank you for your service to the story.
Pastor Andrew said seriously. Vince squirmed below me,
We'll give you a moment before debriefing you.
said Sister Callista confidently. Vint Diesel gurgled in my arms, near death. It's so much gurgling.
Can I ask you for one last favor?
He rasped. Anything, I said, weeping.
I'd like one last tangy, hot, bubbly crow-croa. I want to
He breathed heavily.
plump on it.
Pastor Andrew knelt next to me and handed me a boiling bottle of satisfying crow-croa. I brought it to Vint Diesel's lips and he supped until the life drained from his eyes. I collapsed on his chest crying, slamming my fists on the ground. It was the best summer of my life.